This is Defender Radio. I'm Michael Howie, and this is Defender Radio, the podcast for wildlife advocates and animal lovers, brought to you by the Fur Bearers. Animal law is a topic of growing interest to Canadians, advocates like me and you, and legal experts. While there are some great people doing great work related to animal law in Canada today, there haven't been any university-associated programs specifically on the subject. Until now. Angela Fernandez, a longtime professor at University of Toronto, is taking on the project as director of the university's new animal law program. To share what the vision for this new program is, what prospective students may learn, why there's a need for the program, and how it could help shape law in Canada into the future, Professor Fernandez joins Defender Radio. What first inspired you to pursue animal law? Before we get to the animal law program, as exciting as it is, how did your path, whether it's education, career, or personal experiences, lead you to here?
Michael, thanks for asking that question. So I'm a legal historian by training, and I worked for a long time on a book that was about a legal case involving a hunted fox. And it's from the early 19th century in New York. And I was doing a pretty traditional legal history, like the litigants, the lawyers, finding out how did it get into law school curriculum, which is really how people know this case. And, I really started to feel after a certain amount of time, like, wow, why are we introducing students to property through this case where nobody ever questions, like, yeah, the fox's property. It's just a sort of question of whose property, the person who's first chasing or the person who intervenes and takes the animal. So that really got me thinking about this, the property status of animals, what is the roles, what is the law's role with respect to animals? It should be protective, but then finding out as I'm looking more into it that really the law is not. It's actually facilitating use for a large part of the time.
Yeah, and it's one of those things I think you expect there to be more to it. You expect there to be more behind these laws, and we hear a lot of talk about that kind of law. To me, it's very akin to the North American model of wildlife conservation, wherein it assumes from the outset that animals are resources that must be used. And from that, everything else is born. So it has that same kind of vibe of, oh, well, it's an animal's property, and then everything that follows is based on that. Is that something that, but before you joined up with U of T, was that something that was coming up in your professional work?
It's interesting. I would say no. And in fact, before I started doing this work, we've been really doing it in earnest for the last 5 years, but I would say I've been interested for probably the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've been a law professor at U of T for 21 years.
Okay.
And for the first 10 of those years, I would say I had zero knowledge of any of this. And if someone had asked me, I think I would have thought, oh, well, there must be laws. We have laws about all sorts of other things. That's really one of the reasons why I wanted to move into this beyond the historical aspect was to, really learn myself and then also learn with the students and teach them about what's going on in this area because it's so important, but not it doesn't have a lot of a profile. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to do with the program is kind of bring animal law more into the mainstream. So more law students will get exposure to it. And then they will themselves perhaps figure out in their own professional lives how they might be able to contribute to helping to protect animals better.
That's fascinating and great to hear. And in reading, the CBC did a solid job on an article profiling yourself in the new program, I think. And I was curious, they talk about U of T's growing work in animal law. Can you walk us through how that came to be? Or maybe, just sort of, is there a trend occurring within the student body, or is this something that's been faculty-led?
Yeah, so from our perspective, I would say the real game changer for us was when the Brooks Institute for Animal Rights Law and Policy, which is a US think tank,
Hmm.
they approached me to consider taking on a publication called the Animal Law Digest. They've had a US branch of this project at Harvard they had already had it going for a few years,
Hmm.
and they were interested in doing a Canadian version at U of T. So that was something that, Michael, I will tell you, when they first talked to me about it, I was a bit skeptical because I wasn't sure, we would have enough stuff to put out a publication
Mm.
every 2 weeks, and, but, it's been amazing. We've been doing it for about 3 years now. And there's an animal law research associate at U of T who helps me with that
Hmm.
work. And we have so many things. We have so many stories. And, they're not all good stories, right? Like they're not
Yep.
all happy pro animal stories, but, we're following all of the legislation and cases and academic articles and just international news, even and things. So it's really, that was a real game changer for us. And then I think, for me, that meant I could kind of indicate to like the institution, this is a priority area that has support. And then so basically it's been faculty led since then, but faculty led and you can stand there and cry out into the wilderness type of situation. The students really have to kind of hear it and respond to it. It really resonates with them. And I think for many of them, it's their pets, their companion animals, and
Yep.
probably I would say that's kind of the typical sort of profile for the students. But we also have a lot of students interested in environmental law, like our current dean. She is international lawyer and an environmental lawyer, and so that just sort of makes sense that for people who are interested in wild animals, that is going to be something they're concerned about biodiversity conservation and those issues.
Yeah, it's there's going to be clear overlaps, I think, and I've got a few questions about that. But before we get to it, I am curious. So you were approached by the Brooks Law Digest to do a Canadian version from Harvard, and I think U of T's law program is probably comparable then for Canada. That's what I've heard in the past. But at that point, when you then go, okay, can we do a program at U of T? Was there a little bit of dancing or juggling that had to happen in order to get University of Toronto to accept animal law as a curriculum?
It's interesting. Okay, so I think in part because Harvard has led the way, like you say,
Hmm.
and we really think of them as our, sister organization. There are, a half a dozen or so animal law programs in the U.S. So I think in that respect, we often do this in Canada, and especially at U of T, we'll kind of look to, what's the gold star U.S. and then kind of try to implement that with some tweaks and some changes.
Yeah,
So I would say actually, when I brought this forward, it was received really positively. Like there
that's
wasn't a
great.
lot of you know um hesitation or resistance about it, which was really good. And I think that's just because the dean and other people at the university, they recognize that this is an important and growing area, and they want us to be on board. We don't want to miss the train.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does seem to be a very growing field. I mean, Animal Justice has their incredible law conference coming up, actually, I think around the time this episode's going to drop. It's been going on
Mhm.
for a few years. And there's a regular interest I find now. But the question then becomes how. I think it's for young lawyers or people interested in that. It's well, how do I do this? And this is very clearly going to be a stepping stone for them to get to be able to do that. And speaking of that, in 5 years, what's the vision for this? Is it going to be a curriculum that students go through, or do you see it expanding into clinics, research hubs, cross faculty collaboration, anything like that?
Well, yeah, that's sort of what I'm thinking, is, perhaps what we could do is get some kind of certification or specialization. So if you're coming through doing the law degree, you could maybe, do a certain number of courses, maybe a writing requirement, something like that. And then you get a certification that would help you when you move out into the world. So if you want to do work with animal justice, they will sort of have a way of not like vetting people, but you know what I mean? Like understanding, okay,
Yeah.
this is someone who is kind of plugged in and is knowledgeable. Um, and then eventually, I think it would be great to have a center that would be interdisciplinary at U of T, that would bring together people who are working researchers in different departments and different disciplines, because we do have lots of people. It's just that the university is huge. And so, they're really like
Yep.
scattered. Like we'll have like somebody in history or sociology or anthropology or philosophy or, and in fact, a lot of my work in this area came from a group that I started in 2013 called the Jackman Humanities Institute, and we're still running it. It's the working group in animals and the law and humanities. And that was
Okay.
the idea behind that group, was basically anybody come, faculty, graduate student, undergraduate student, JD law student, whoever, as long as you're, got some research that's involving animals in some way. And that's been, I think the fact that it's still going is a testament to the fact that there was a need for that, and people really appreciated having that space to come together.
And talking about that collaboration, and I think this is an opportunity to maybe explore what animal law is and then how it connects with those other areas of law. So you already mentioned environmental. I think there's some pretty clear connections there, but then also Indigenous law or even constitutional rights in Canada, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms and things. So how would you maybe define that animal law? And then I'm making motions with my hands for listeners. It does not help you right now, but it helps me. But how then does that area of law, animal law, connect over and cross over into these other areas?
I think of animal law as being really any law that touches and concerns animals. And then you can think on a spectrum of how protective is it? How much is it facilitating use? And then how much is it protecting? And so then you can sort of evaluate them along that spectrum or continuum. So I have a pretty broad approach to that. And the general course is structured in that way. Like we really try to consider all sorts of things. But yes, as you indicate, there are really like crossovers with certain areas. So constitutional law is definitely one of them because of the just the freedom of expression that's often involved when we're talking about the humans, right, who want to speak up for animals and their protections for that. And in fact, the student who was interviewed in the CBC article with me, Kate Shackleton, Kate did this amazing paper last year where she wrote about animal justice's challenge to the ag-gag law in Ontario. So that's the law that says you can't come onto the
Yes.
user's property if you have any, if you say anything misleading. And so it's very silencing with respect to undercover investigations. But there were also provisions in the law that would impact the activities of the SAVE movement, which is a
Yep.
bearing witness movement. And Kate really focused in her paper on those provisions, and they're not being appealed currently before the Ontario Court of Appeal. So but she did a really great paper on that. And it's interesting because talking to her about it, she's not someone who really identifies as an animal person, and she probably
Yep.
isn't going to practice animal law. But she said to me, Professor Fernandez, this is like the most exciting thing happening in constitutional law right now. Like not just this is the most exciting thing in animal law, but this is really the most exciting thing in constitutional
Yeah.
law. So she wanted to do that and work on that. And she also works with our David Asper Center for Constitutional Rights at U of T, which has been there for a really long time and does lots of really great work.
I'm curious if there are glaring gaps in Canadian animal law today that you think students should be critically thinking about. Is there something where it's like, yep, this is a missing component. We need to examine that. And then again, ideally, long term, if you're sending the young JD students out into the world, they will eventually have that knowledge to maybe fill those gaps or help close the legislation or policy behind them.
Mhm.
So is there something obvious or a couple of obvious things that you hope they're going to be able to look at and think critically about?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say the first category of issues like that would be the ones that involve the clearly unnecessary cruelties.
Mm.
So, animals and entertainment, the fur bearer listeners will be interested, at fur farming, right?
Yep.
That one is just, why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense anymore to be, if it ever did, it certainly does not and make any sense anymore. Also, the yeah, so captivity, farming, some of those really cosmetics testing. So we've banned that now in Canada,
Yep.
that's another one. It's like, well, like what really? Like,
Mhm.
and so in a way, those really should be low hanging fruit issues. So I think if a student who's maybe interested in moving forward with something like that, those are actually pretty uh, feasible, viable pathways. And in fact, we do have a student who graduated from U of T a number of years ago, at the same time as Camille Lapchuk and Animal Justice, Marty McKendry, and he's been working in the Senate on some of their pro animal protection bills for a number of years now. And that's super, super important work that he's been doing, including the 2019 ban on the cetaceans in
Yeah.
captivity. So that one, and you see, right, the reaction to marine land, the most recent deaths.
Yep.
The public is very, very on board with that. That's very, you know, everyone is like, what is happening? But, it's so interesting, Michael, because in the digest, we cover deaths in marine land and we've been covering them for years.
Mhm.
And nobody's ever really responded and certainly media hasn't reached out and things like that. So I think there's something right now that's happening that are making people sort of more aware, or more responsive. I mean, it could be just like the terrible state of the world, right? Like
Yeah.
everything's so terrible, and you know, but yeah, so I would say those really very clearly unnecessary practices are ones where students and other advocates can move in there and fill a space and do good work. The other issues relating to farm animals are also very, very important, and that is obviously more of a recalcitrant area because
Yep.
it's hard because it's touches on people's consumption, eating practices, and so on. But we learn a lot about that in the course, and I think that's really, really important because people sort of assume, oh, there's law relating to farm animals, but really all we have is law relating to transport and slaughter. We
Yep.
really don't have laws for like on farm, and like nominally the criminal law would apply, but it's you can't even get on there. And it's a reporting system. So, they're really, really unprotected. And so the codes that are formulated, because they're not mandatory and they're not enforced, they sort of look like law, and people think maybe it is law, but it's really not.
Yep.
So I think it's really important for people who are inside of the law to understand that and be able to explain that and articulate it to non-lawyers.
Yeah, the NFAC codes are curious. I'll say that because we don't have time for me to start on a full bore rant about them, which does happen from time to time. Voluntary codes that aren't enforced in any way whatsoever. It's helpful. But anyway, on that note, is that something you talk about with the students? Is not just the seeing the legal gaps and everything, but then how to manage that emotional, mental, spiritual, philosophical loss as well. Of well, the law says this, but even though, and Marine Land's another great example, I agree, the public is very much on board. But there seems to be very little movement. I remember talking with Phil Demers 12 years ago or something like that, and not a lot has changed. So is that something that you talk about, where it's, okay, you're going to see it, and here's how we can maybe deal with that as lawyers and as humans?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm really glad you raised this because I think the human aspect is always like it's the first thing. Really in a lot of ways the most important thing. Like, how do you
Mhm.
engage with this work and keep yourself healthy and safe and whole and able to kind of get up and do the next day, right? So,
Yep.
there is a quite a lot of literature now on like trauma informed lawyering, and also just I know myself, I sit on the mental health and wellness committee at the university, so it's really a topic that's near and dear to my heart, the
Hmm.
mindfulness meditation and things like that we do. And I think that is super, super important for animal advocates. And I think for the students, the law students, especially because a lot of them are coming with not a lot of that background and awareness, like they're coming for their dog or their cat,
Yeah.
they're going to be like, what? Whoa. And then, we learn all these things. And so I feel very much like when you're teaching that, it has to be like quite a gentle sort of thing. And so, like, if we're going to watch anything, I try not to show too graphics things, but like we watch this for animals and research. this cartoon, and I guess I shouldn't say cartoon because it's a very sophisticated animated clip of a Ralph, I think his name's Ralph the Rabbit, who is being subjected to testing. And, even watching that, I find it's quite hard for the students, and I have to give a trigger warning and talk about it. And usually what I do is I play it the first 15 minutes of class, and I say, if you're having like a day, just come 15 minutes late, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And regulate for yourself, like how you consume these things. I know for me, and I usually share this with them, I can watch things, but I can't really listen to audio.
Mm.
And so, kind of, I don't know, I find like just talking about it and sharing those kind of tips and tricks is important.
Yeah, that's something that there's no real training for of managing that, and everybody's going to have their own ways. I know for me, I look at a lot of it that comes through our email system and our doors that we're looking at dealing with or hearing about in some way. I also have a cat eating things on my desk right now. Apologies, everyone. She gets very excited when I talk and assumes it's to her. Um, but for me, Ed, there's a couple of things. Dogs getting shot. Those videos, I can't. Almost anything else you put in front of me, I can manage, but that one for me just pushes me too much. And I consider that though a positive in that I'm aware for myself now, where are my boundaries? And that's the hard thing I think to learn, as you're saying, is what can I take in and be okay with versus what do I need to really put something in place of to make sure I'm okay with?
Mhm, mhm.
Not always clear.
Mhm. And
Um,
it's a process for all of us, right? Over the
mhm.
course of our lives, kind of figuring it out and thinking about it. And then what I find is the skills and the coping techniques, I can apply them to other areas. Like
Oh,
the
for
news
sure.
is on, right? And I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't think today I can listen to this. And I'll take an active step to protect myself and turn it off, or just movies and just, I don't know. I think it's very good for all of us to be more aware and think about ourselves. We're moving around in a world where there's, horrible things are happening left, right, and center. And so, especially for young people to kind of figure out, okay, this is what affects me, and this is how I can deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just strongly advise a healthy dose of Mike Schur created content once a week. That's The Office and Parks and Rec and The Good Place, all of that lovely stuff. It's just joy for the brain.
Very good,
Um,
right?
Now, we're talking a lot about ethics and public perception, and I'm curious, when you're teaching, are you leaning on ethical frameworks, welfare, animal rights, sentience, ecological value, or is there a mix that you approach it with to give a more complete look at all of those considerations?
Yeah, I try to expose people to sort of all the different philosophies and schools and approaches. Um, animal welfare, animal rights. I'm not so crazy about that one because I just feel like, I don't know, it seems to like divide people and
It's a
like
very divisive
kind of,
subject, even though
yeah,
we largely
exactly.
want the same things.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
So I kind of try to present it like, okay, animal protection, and just sort of go with that. But yeah, no, the different philosophies and schools of thought, that's very important. I think also, in terms of ethics, this is an area where people have really been had this very, very well developed for, I don't know, like what, 30, 40 years. So it's really a situation where I don't think there's any problem with the thinking and the theory and the philosophy. It's really a question of society and also law really lagging very much behind. And Michael, that's super typical. That's super typical. Law is very conservative. It moves super slow, and it just it takes a while, but it's always the ethical imperative that will push things forward. And then public support. You need to have you need to have the public caring and wanting to see that.
Is there conversation then as well that helps students prep for when there's going to be animal law overreach criticism? So we hear this a lot. We've already talked about agriculture, especially animals, farmed animals, fur farming, and so on, and other trades. I mean, even in the comments on the CBC article, there's people misunderstanding what the course is and saying that you're creating law, and a lot of very quick whataboutism and slippery slope stuff.
Mhm, mhm.
So is that also something that the students are being shown or talked to about or prepped in some way for?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think because they're like immersed in the wider program, I don't think it's going to occur to them too much to be
Okay.
thinking, "Oh, why am I doing this?" And because they're doing all these other things. They're doing, their human rights course and their clinics and we have a downtown legal services with, landlord tenant and all those things. So, it's really not like, oh, the University of Toronto or the law school, we're just doing this and we're not dealing with the human related issues too. It's really like, I mean, the way I see it is, if you care, you're going to care about everyone and you're going
Yeah.
to care, and that's going to be human and non-human.
So if we were to sit down again in 10 years and have another conversation about this, what would, quote, success in animal law in Canada look like to you at that point, do you think?
10 years. I would say 10 years success will look like animal law programs at all the other Canadian law schools, and if there isn't one there, students will say, hey, how come you don't have one? You need to have one. And, I would say success would also be, more than one faculty member who's interested in this and has an expertise in it. Just because, the way the universities work, people have sabbaticals and people, and things, and someone will retire and you can't have your program just close or collapse on you when that happens. So I think we need like that kind of legacy
Mhm.
built into the programs. And yeah, I think success would also look like other countries who wanting to do these take these steps and organize animal protection would maybe reach out to us and we would work with them collaboratively internationally. So yeah, I think this is kind of the sky's the limit, really.
That's amazing to hear. And what opportunities are going to be there for students who want to specialize in this area? You've mentioned already, it sounds like there are a lot, in fact, of opportunities. What are some of those, or what do some of those look like?
Yeah, because what we've really been doing is like building slowly, organically,
Hmm.
and then it's kind of like, oh, okay, now I think we've tipped over into we need it. We need to call ourselves a program. But yeah, for the opportunities for the students, it's really the courses. We have a seminar that's being offered for the first time this year, and that's a postdoctoral student who's based it on her doctoral research. And she actually is also with a team put on an exhibit that's happening in our law library. So if this is
Oh,
airing around the time of the animal law conference, there
mhm.
will be an opportunity to come up and visit the exhibit, I think on the Friday of the conference.
Awesome.
So maybe listeners might like to know about that. So there's the courses. Then there's also we have fellowships that are funded by a funder, the Hadley Family Foundation. So
Mhm.
they're doing a JD level fellowship, which is in conjunction
Wow.
with animal justice. Doctoral student support. I have a wonderful doctoral student named Ricardo Diaz who's working on animals rights and animal and rights of nature.
Hmm.
So shout out to Ricardo. And then we have MHSA working on the postdoctoral level, also funded by Hadley, and she's doing amazing, amazing things. So those fellowships are really important because people, it's a signal, it's a cue. Like A, this is a thing. B, this is come and do it, and it's prestigious and it's supported.
And on that, let's close on optimism and hope, as I like to. As we've noted, there's a lot of not great stuff going on in the world today, right now. It's scary, it's overwhelming. No matter which direction you look, something's on fire, and someone's doing something awful to someone else. But in all of this, many people still do find optimism and hope. And I'm wondering for you, leading this program and all of these new opportunities in front of you, what's giving you that optimism and hope to keep pushing?
Mhm. Honestly, Michael, I would say right now it's the amazing response we're getting. This is beyond my wildest dreams. I really, I just thought, oh, we'll do this, and it's kind of time to do it, and I just was
Yeah.
being sort of very pragmatic about it. But no, the emotional reaction has just been just really wonderful, and I have this meditation that has a thing where you think of a wonderful moment, and then
Mhm.
when you're having like low points during the day, you try to like remind yourself of that moment. So my wonderful moment right now is Friday night at our launch. It was just it was just like so nice to see people who were just so happy to see this and
Mhm.
really showing up and being supportive. It's a really it's a wonderful feeling.
And people who are interested in this, I mean, whether we're talking about kids in high school who are figuring out what they want to do because there's still an intense, insane pressure on them at 16 to know, nothing personal in there for me, or it's folks who are already in law at another university or U of T, or people who are considering going back, late in life learners. Where can they start if they're interested in this program in this area of law?
Absolutely. Well, I would say they can reach out to me. They can send me an email. I'm angela.fernandez@utoronto.ca. And, we'll get you on our events list. And we have speakers coming, at least once a month. And you can come and meet people that way. It's hybrid, so you can even come just online to do that. And yeah, we can talk about what your particular interest and skill set is. I mean, I really believe everybody has their own platform, right? And we can do different things from that platform. And so, yeah, we're very interested to connect with anyone who would like to be connected with us.
Anything I didn't ask or talk about that you'd like to get in?
Anything didn't ask. I would say just maybe the website, Michael, if we could give it a shout out. It
Oh,
literally
of course.
launched last week. And so if people want to learn more, they can go to the website. The Animal Law Research Associate, Kiera Berkeley, she worked so hard on this
Hmm.
all summer. And so we're really thrilled that it's up and happening, and people could get more information there.
Awesome. We'll link to that in the show notes, and a shout out to Kiera. She is awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To learn more about Professor Angela Fernandez and the Animal Law Program at U of T, visit jackmanlaw.utoronto.ca/animal-law-program, the University of Toronto website, which I have linked in this week's show notes and at defenderradio.com. I want to send a huge thank you to Angela for taking the time to have this chat with me, especially right on the heels of the launch of the program. We're all so excited to see what you and your team accomplish. And thank you, friends, for listening. You can follow the Fur Bears on Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, or LinkedIn to get updates on Defender Radio and the other programs and campaigns of the Fur Bears. You can also subscribe to our weekly e-newsletter at thefurbearers.com. Until next time, I'm Michael Howie for Defender Radio and the Fur Bearers, reminding you to stay informed and stay strong.